Not since Dracula stalked the earth has the world known so terrifying a day or night.
It is I who renounce you, and in the name of Satan, I place a curse upon you.
Black Sunday is like no motion picture you've ever seen. There are those who believe and those who do not. But both must know the suspense, the shock of meeting the living dead and of bringing the dead to life.
Look into my eyes. Embrace me. You will die, but I can bring you pleasures mortals cannot know.
Black Sunday, the most terrifying motion picture you'll ever see. Satan, wearing strange robes and fighting with all the furies of Hades, arouses the countryside to a frenzy of black terror.
Horror Hounds, welcome to episode 10 of the Black Sunday Tapes Classic Horror. This week we've got a rather special film. It's a film that gave this podcast its name, gave my film festival its name. I am, of course, talking about 1960 classic Black Sunday. This is, without a doubt, as you can probably imagine, one of my favourite films of all time, one of the most influential films on me, back to front. Named the podcast channel after it, named the film festival after it.
There it is.
I adore this. We're going to get into this. I know this is the first time Michael's ever watched this. So, Michael,
it
what's your
was.
thoughts?
My
What did you
thoughts.
think?
There's so many. This, I was super excited to see it. I know we've been waiting for a while to do it. I know it influenced you to the degree that it's influenced you, even though we haven't had the discussion about it yet. And I was like, cool, I get to watch this movie now. And I have a toothache where it feels like my tooth is trying to explode out of my face. And I only made it about half an hour into this picture. And I had to tap out. I couldn't do it. But in that half an hour, I was like, oh my God, I took the note. I can't wait to watch this while not in pain. Like, and so it continued the next day, but I'm like, and so I'm drinking a little, trying to get rid of that pain. And I watch it again. Incredible. Like everything that I saw in that first half hour, like continues throughout the film. The level of filmmaking on display, the fluid master shots that he pulls off, the set dressing, the fact that it's his first film.
So you touched on a director there, Mario Bava. Are you aware of any of Mario's other work? Have you seen any Italian horror cinema from this era, the 60s, and then more prominently into the 70s?
So Italian horror is probably my biggest blind spot when it comes to a lot of cinema, actually. But I have seen the Mother of Tears trilogy, and then a buddy of mine brought me to an all-day marathon of giallos right before, well, like in January of this year. Okay. So when we could still do those things.
Yeah.
And I saw Opera, which was incredible. I need to see that again.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my grand total knowledge is like 8 films.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is a great. Yeah, I mean, you've got the 7 or so before this, but I would, whenever someone says to me, "What's the jumping off point for Italian horror cinema?" I always say Black Sunday, and oddly enough, based in history, this is pretty much the jumping off point. It's the third, I believe it was the third Italian horror film made of the talkie era, as it was labeled in America. So even though this was 1960, films were, horror was banned in Italy for a long time, and it started to make its
Sleeping
comeback.
Beauty was considered a horror film when it came out there, or Snow White? Was it Snow White?
I think
One
it
of
was
those
Snow
two.
White. Yeah,
Snow
Snow
White
White.
was
Yeah,
considered a horror film.
yeah, because of the more scary elements in it. Yeah, so they completely
Like the
banned.
witchcraft and whatnot. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, so they completely banned. And you got to remember a part of that is Italy is a very, very religious place. Like the Catholic Church
You
have
think?
a whole hold over that country. So anything witchcraft, especially, is very, very frowned upon. However, come the late 50s, early 60s, that it started making a comeback. Black Sunday was the first major release in that. Director Mario Bava was a huge pioneer in that. He, even though this is considered his first film as a director, he actually did the other two horror films that preceded this within the talkie era in Italian cinema. He actually directed on both of them, but he co-directed, and I'm not sure he's actually credited with them because he was actually a very, very talented cinematographer. And essentially them two previous pictures where he was acting as a cinematographer, the directors either walked off or got fired, and he had to finish the picture. So he did direct a bunch of that, and then it was off the back of that and off the back of the somewhat success of those films that he got offered his own feature, and he was asked, what film do you want to make? Is there a film you want to make? Is there a story you want to tell? He picked a book that he wanted to tell, or I think it might be a short story, and yeah, that resulted in Black Sunday, or as some may know it, The Mask of Satan. I believe the European release was called Mask of Satan, and Black Sunday is the UK and US release of that. Oddly enough, a little side note that you'll be interested in, my Blu-ray of this actually has both versions. So I have the Black Sunday American cut, original American cut of this, that was heavily edited and completely rescored with more of a generic American horror score. And then it also has the European Mask of Satan version, which is the uncut, which is now the widely available version anyway, before countries opened it up to not being banned. Because this was banned in the UK until 20 years ago, I think, something like that. So
fairly recently.
yeah,
Yes.
insane, absolutely insane. And then in America, it was the only version you could get for a very long time was the heavily edited version. The uncut version is now the version you'll get everywhere. But yeah,
Right.
it's interesting to, and another interesting point on that I wanted to touch on is, even though it was heavily edited in America, it was still a huge success. But not only was it a huge success, the heavily edited version was still considered too graphic,
Yeah.
which is absolutely amazing. But obviously, you've watched the up-to-date version, you've watched the very graphic version,
Yes.
which even today in 2020 standards, right, it's pretty bloody graphic.
It's pretty
So yeah,
gnarly.
man,
It's
touch
pretty
on
gnarly.
touch on that, dude.
That's high
How
praise
did
for
that
me.
hit you?
We don't need to get into it, but I'm a colorblind individual, and I'm red colorblind specifically. So black and white cinema is very important to me, and I was not expecting the level of gore because of the time period in which the film was made, and B, was certainly not expecting to be like, oh Jesus, there's blood coming out of every orifice, and then they've just made more orifices. like,
The
it's
opening of this
intense,
film,
my friend.
especially, right?
Oh,
Like the
I'm sorry. One
opening
more
of
time.
this film from the get-go, when the main character, played by the absolutely amazing Barbara Steele, is tied to the tree, and she is then branded, which
Yes, that's the first. That's the first thing that
yeah,
happens.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is crazy. So that was actually one of the first major cuts that was made. They cut that scene was still there, but they cut the branding.
Okay.
They didn't show the branding, and then the even more graphic is where the mask of Satan is now to her face in a very graphic way, and then you see all the blood pour out of it. So again,
I mean, it's not
from
the
what
human
I
centipede too graphic, but it's pretty graphic.
yes, exactly. And from what I understand, the they kept the mask going on her face, but what they cut was all the blood coming out afterwards. So that was quite
Yeah.
interesting. That they thought the mask being nailed to her face was okay, but seeing blood pour out afterwards wasn't.
You can fire a gajillion guns in a PG-13 movie, but you can't see a bloody bullet hit.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
you have one bloody bullet hit. Nope. Oh nope. Now you're an R.
Yeah, absolutely insane. So I just
Yeah.
touched on Barbara Steele. a minute ago. So what did you think of the cast of this? Well, I'm always interested to get your thoughts on, when we go back and watch a lot of these classic horror films, especially the ones you haven't seen. What do you think of the cast? I mean, Barbara Steele for me is one of the all-time great screen queens, and I say that lightly because she hated the term screen queen and she hated being known as a screen queen, despite that's where she made her name after this and got a lot of opportunities and done incredibly well. I mean, we'll go through our back catalogue in a minute, but yeah, what did you think of the cast? Who stood out to you?
Well, you already said, Barbara Steele. Like, it's you can't talk about this film and not talk about her. But since we will be talking about her at length, the character of the father, who, sidebar, was 36 when they filmed this.
Yeah.
When I found that out, I'm like, that guy's 5 seconds older than me. That guy.
Yeah.
Like,
crazy, right?
like, but I appreciated like a lot of his performances. Just even when it approached being over the top, like I giggled every single time I watched it. And he was they cannot win against a symbol of Christ. It's just his delivery. I just laughed every time. But like I've also, as someone who was raised in the church, as they say, I have seen that level of fervor gotten to very quickly by people in that fashion. So I was like, yeah. And like later on, he's being menaced, and just the look on his face as it goes from kind of like, I'm gonna get angry and you're gonna go away, and nope, and as he just shrinks into the bed. I was taken by a lot of his nonverbal performance, but also whoever was voicing him over at the time. But I appreciated the delivery. Yeah.
That's one of the interesting facts about a lot of these Italian early horror films, but also this carried on through all of Italian cinema, especially Italian cinema that was funded by Americans. I mean, you see this probably most famously in the Sergio Leone, Clint Eastwood spaghetti trilogy, where you have essentially your American star, your English speaking star, but everyone around him is essentially Italian. Like in the spaghetti trilogy, you've got other people that speak English, but you've got a lot of people in them films that just spoke Italian. It's very much the same case with this. When they made this film.
But the guy on the commentary, I believe, said that the dialogue was naturally recorded in English, but it was just people didn't like the performances were considered so not acceptable that they redubbed the whole film.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I always find it really interesting because whatever version you watch, you're kind of getting one side of it. So like if you watch the English language version, you're getting Barbara Steele and her full on her performance. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a strange mix of whose voice you're hearing and
well, I don't know what audio track I actually got then, because the Kino Lorber has both versions, but they're like available separately, and I picked up I picked up the one that's supposed to be the uncut.
Is it called Black Sunday or Mask of Satan?
Well, it says Black Sunday on it, but like the film, when the film starts, the title card reads Mask of Satan.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you got Mask of Satan, yeah. So that should be the European version.
This newly remastered HD edition is the original Italian cut of the film.
Yeah.
Complete with Roberto Nicoli's expressive score, which I loved.
Yeah, that score's incredible. That score's incredible.
It fit the tone perfectly. Like it set the tone. Man. Like it just fit everything. Whenever it swelled perfectly. Whenever it was barely there, it was still effective. What do you think?
I get that, man. Yeah, I get that. To be honest with you, like the score on the Mask of Satan European version is great. Like that's the original, and that stands up definitely. And despite it being a little bit more generic on the re-edited, redubbed version that was the original US release, the score of that is a composer called Les Baxter, I believe. And I don't hate that either, man. That kind of works for me. Like I think the first time I saw it was that version. So
the American version?
Yeah, the American version. Yeah. So I think I've got like maybe a little bit of nostalgia towards that version, but I do prefer the European version. But that score, man, like they both work. I think they both work, and they both like even the edited version of the film still works. It still holds up. It's quite interesting that, but because I've seen both versions a couple of times, sometimes they kind of just blur into one. You don't
Okay.
really, do you know what I mean? Like you kind of, even when you're watching the cut version, because you have seen the stuff that they cut out on other versions. Yeah, it's very interesting, man. It's they kind of, it just works. Where I think that really, really speaks to how good this film is despite it being chopped up for that original American release, it doesn't hinder the quality of the film like at all. It's still an outstanding film. Really,
Yeah.
really holds up.
And I think one of the reasons the effects hold up like they do is, because they were real things,
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, man. Oh my God, the tiny scorpions. The tiny scorpions.
Oh
I
yes,
am not
yeah.
okay with any size of any scorpion, and those I did not appreciate.
Yeah, they were crazy, man. Like the effects in this, the use of the scorpions in the coffin scene you're referring to,
Yeah.
outstanding. Like they just knew how to creep people out.
There's an effect so good I didn't realize it was an effect until I found out that information on the commentary.
Oh, interesting. What
Uh,
was that?
the when a character walks through a door and a hanging corpse drops in front of them.
Oh yeah, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I was like, wow, that's cool. Right on. Well played. I wonder how they filmed that with that guy. That wasn't a guy. That was a wax-headed dummy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that wax head
Interesting.
was so impressive. And like,
Yeah.
if you stare at it, maybe you can kind of tell, but like that was kind of the point too, Like it was only on
No, it was
screen for a
insane, man.
second.
It was so
Yeah.
good. Like all the effects are great. Do you know, top to bottom, the technical department on this
Oh,
film,
it's insane.
are insane. I mean, the one I would like definitely touch on out the gate is the set design
The
and
lighting. Oh, the set design. Okay.
the set design and the building. I mean, the lighting's
Yeah.
great and the cinematography is great. Like that's outstanding. But that's kind of, while it's amazing, you kind of expect it for these films, because when you go
Okay.
back and watch some of these classic horror films, that's kind of the thing they all get right. They all get the lighting right. They all get the camera right.
Well, I
It's
mean,
the
but
thing
that
that they
being
don't get
said,
than
like
anyone else.
there was some lighting I felt was almost kind of like a cheap haunted house, but then there was other times where I felt the lighting like a screen grab belonged in the Louvre. You know what I mean?
For me, that was the set design, like the set design and the stages that were built for this were just absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, no, just the massiveness of them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like from the tomb to the mansion
That
to
slow 360
everything.
around that tomb is just I love it. I loved it so much. And and same with when she's playing the piano and then homie's
Yes,
cleaning his gun
yeah.
and then dude sitting in front of the awesome
Oh,
dragons
what a
of
like
the
what a great
fireplace.
camera move.
I mean, come
And
on.
and Mario Bava was renowned for those type of camera moves.
And he was his
He
own director of photography, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there
yeah.
you
He
go.
well, like I said, that's how he made his name. Like he was a director of photography. He was a very, very, very good photographer. So yeah, he just got the opportunity to direct and can make that jump. But yeah, he still maintained shooting on this film, and yeah, my God, does it look good for it? Like you said, those sweeping tracking shots, absolutely outstanding, absolutely beautiful. They really, really are. So I just want to bring it back around to Barbara Steele, because
Mhm.
I feel like she definitely, needs to be spoke about, because this was quite a hard film for her to make. As I touched on, she didn't speak any Italian, or very, very little Italian when they were making this. Mario Bava, from what I understand, didn't speak any English, or again, very, very little English. So it was actually quite a tough relationship between them when they were working. And I
Mhm.
think that's quite well documented of how hard it was for them to get along. But man, her performance, and she's playing two roles in this film, and
Mhm.
they're completely separate. They're completely individual roles. Like they work. You completely buy into two separate characters, two completely different characters. But there is that really nice haunting through line that obviously plays into the story with them being related. But yeah,
Mhm.
man, I mean,
Absolutely, yeah.
what really stood out with her performance for you?
Just well, and again because of special effects, she can give two performances, and which allows you to see the dichotomy in the two performances right there. I mean, for a large chunk of the film, most of her acting is all in her face because her body is frozen. Just the fact that she's able to communicate everything that she can communicate that way is because the story is next level bonkers, and her ability to play both villain and ingenue, is that the, am I using that properly? You know,
Yeah, no, it
like
really was, man. She's incredible.
the innocent waif character. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of feel like she doesn't get enough credit for the difference in them roles she played. Like when she's playing the witch vampire character, you know, depending on how you want to take it, that is a really pronounced role. It's very, like, you kind of feel the weight behind that. You kind of feel the age behind that. The character feels a lot older than what Barbara still was at the time. You feel like this witch has been around for a very, very long time. But then when she's playing the princess, there is real innocence to it. There's real, yeah,
Like
there's a
it's
real
just
naivety to it.
yeah,
You really believe
childlike
that
innocence and
she's
whatnot.
this young princess that's gonna be taken advantage of by, you know, by this evil witch. And what's really interesting about it is, again, I know we bring up it a lot on this podcast, but when you're looking at the way female characters are dealt with in classic horror compared to modern horror, you know, and sometimes they still don't get it right in modern horror. But when you look at it like this, it's a very, very interesting film because Barbara still gets to play the victim, but also the
The villain.
perpetrator.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It's this.
It is inarguably her film, and so just that in and of itself is, you
Yes.
know, like
No, man, she's outstanding. And so Barbara still, before Black Sunday, had done a couple of roles. Nothing of note from, you know, most of the stuff when you look at what she's done actually was cut or uncredited. Black Sunday was definitely her first major breakout role. But then she went on to have a lot of like huge success within the horror genre. Like I said, from what I understand, she didn't like being known as a screen queen, though, you know, she definitely fell into that lead actress, you know, within the horror genre. You know, most notably after Black Sunday, she done Pit and the Pendulum, which is another classic horror film I want to cover on
yeah, we
this
absolutely have
podcast.
to touch that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. We're
I
definitely going to
might
do that.
own that.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do that at some point. She was in the Alfred Hitchcock Presents TV series.
Yeah.
She done a few other films throughout the 60s. But then, like, you know, she kept working until the 70s. And most notably, which a lot of people will know, is the film Shivers from mid 1970s, I believe. Yeah,
Cronenberg?
she was in that as well. Yes. Yeah, the Cronenberg film. She's in that as well. So,
I
you know,
love
she
Cronenberg.
really kept
I
going.
swear.
She really kept going, man. I mean, she's still going now. She's still doing voice work this
Oh,
year. I think she's got voice work credit. So, yeah, I mean, she's still going, man. And she's absolutely incredible. I love Barbara still. I think she's incredible in this film. Everything I've ever seen her in. I think she's absolutely amazing. And yeah, I would definitely recommend anyone listening to go and sort out any Barbara Still films. Like I said, we're going to cover a couple of the other ones on this podcast at some point. They're definitely ones I want to touch on. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out there. I just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, man, absolutely love that. So yeah, dude, let's bring it back around to cinematography because
oh my
obviously
god.
you're a huge cinematography fan. I'm a massive cinematography fan. This film basically exists because Mario Bava is an amazing cinematographer. We've already touched on the sweeping shots, but more so than that, what really works for you? What really brings this film together with regard to cinematography?
The way that he'll paint with light, there's the way that he dances the camera, like literally when I mean we've already touched upon the crypt, but when the camera comes into the pub and kind of pans to see a bunch of people dancing and then starts to dance with a few of them before drifting off from the dancers to the doctor and his you know, young protege at the table. I watched it 4 times in a week instead of using my time otherwise.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's so good.
really works. I mean, there's not too much more you can say about how Mario Bava uses that camera because he was just legendary. for it, like absolutely legendary for the way he would move the camera about. And he done it before Black Sunday, but he also carried on throughout his films. I believe he is the cinematographer on nearly all of his films. I think, like, even the ones that he doesn't get the credit for, if that goes to someone else, from what I understand, it was basically shot by him, and he always took over. I mean, what a great,
I mean, come on.
yeah, when you're that
When
good,
you're
right?
that talented, yeah. I mean, come
Exactly.
on.
How you gonna do that guy's job? But yeah, man, like, just an outstanding cinematographer, really. And if to kind of like close up the cinematography aspect, if you really like the work he done on Black Sunday, and for those of you out there that might not have seen other work that he's done, I would say that a few of them that really stands out is The Evil Eye, Blood and Black Lace is another one that's really, and these are just films that he directed as well. So in terms of just really, really great Italian classic horror, yeah, I would say The Evil Eye, Blood and Black Lace, and then probably most famously is A Bay of Blood, which
Okay,
was
then.
kind of that. Yeah, Bay of Blood is 1971, I believe. That's, again, for me, that's when we start pushing into modern horror. But it's definitely one that I think we might have to cover on this podcast, because it's a real bridging of the gap between what he done with what I consider classic horror, bridging into what would become modern horror,
Okay.
mid-70s into the 80s. But yeah, like, go and check out his back catalogue. The guy has
Yeah,
done,
it's gonna happen.
I mean, Jesus, the guy's done a ton of films. Like, he just didn't stop working, basically, He just, man, he would make 2 or 3 films a year sometimes. It's like he'd be involved in 2 or 3 films a year. Absolutely incredible. Really, really was.
There's so many little things, but the effects were just like next level, like the use of makeup and light. Like, this movie could not have been shot in color as much as at the proverbial they wanted him to do it, because so there's an effect in the film where a character is having the life drained from them, and the effect was achieved with light and makeup, and could not have been achieved if they had filmed in color, because it used colored light and specifically colored makeup to bring it in and out of focus.
When you dig back in classic horror, even like Hollywood classic horror, that's a well-known special effects technique, is using, especially when you're shooting in black and white, you can use color makeup and then filters that go on the camera to achieve incredible looks. There's a very, very famous one from, I believe it's the silent film era. For the life of me, I can't remember what the film was called. But it's essentially where this young woman is a witch, but she is presented as the classical, beautiful woman, not the also classical old hag, as it were. She's
Mm-hmm.
presented in this beautiful state where she can mix in with this family and trick them, essentially. And within this shot, no, the camera doesn't cut, there's no edits, there's no break, the camera doesn't move away. Within the shot, this beautiful actress turns into this hideous old witch. And
Okay.
you're like, how the hell does that happen? But basically how it happens is the hideous witch makeup was done in a certain color, that when you put a certain filter on the camera, it can't pick up that color. So then
Mm-hmm.
essentially you film, you don't see the makeup, you're just seeing the actress as she is. But then as you flick that filter off or slowly peel that filter back, now you see the makeup. So it's completely done in camera, and it's breathtaking. It's
Yeah.
absolutely breathtaking. It really, really is. But yeah, they use certain technique like that in Black Sunday, but they used every technique across the board, man. I mean, the technique of where the old witch in this film, they discover a body, and she's, as you can imagine, basically just a skeleton at this point. And through the course of a drop of blood, she starts to rejuvenate. And you essentially see most of that within camera, and it's amazing. There was
Yeah.
no visual effects. There was nothing like that back then. This was all done with stop motion animation, I believe, is in there. Just absolute genius on the part
Well,
of.
and it was achieved through use of lights and eggs at one point. Like when her eyes are coming back, like that was a couple of eggs, and
Yeah.
then they an extra bit of light to make the in quote pupils, if you will, appear. Like it was just yeah,
Yeah,
just
it was
everything that they
insane.
did. This was just and like the gross like whatever was going on inside the eye socket at one point. Like it was literally jelly and rice. Just the sound effects of the jelly and the rice and the way it's moving is just gross.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, man. It's but the like I said, the technical aspects of this film, like absolute next level.
Next level.
And to bring that back round to cinematography, actually, we keep saying about the black and whiteness and the monochrome look and how amazing it is, and it's absolutely outstanding. It really is. It's some of, if not the best, monochrome work ever done. So Mario Bava was a huge advocate of black and white. He, this is 1960. Color has existed for a while, and he would go on to later shoot in color. And my God, would he shoot in color? I mean, he become one of the pioneers of those Italian color palettes. Where really bright colors.
Mhm.
But he loved black and white. He's bread and butter was black and white. So much so that the sets for this film were actually built and designed with that in mind. So the sets that were constructed had no color in them whatsoever. They were completely built to work as best as possible on black and white film. I just thought that
So like
was,
the set was black and white. Like that's ridiculous.
yeah, essentially, yeah, like everything was black and white. There's actually a famous quote from Barbara Still where she says it's essentially the most black and white film she's ever been a part of, because not only what you see on screen is black and white, but the sets were black and white, and everyone that turned up to work was just wearing black. There was no color evident on this film whatsoever. Yeah, but it was. I mean, man, like that's just a director that knows what he wants, knows where he's going. Like he knows that as early as possible, and that's quite part and parcel today. You will work with every department to get that right, but for him, back in the 60s, man, that was really important. So, like I said, real pioneer of cinema, really is. And again, just go and sort out his back catalogue, because the guy's done some incredible work. He really has. He's one of those directors that once you get into him, you start seeing a lot of people that talk about him. But for the most part, he's not a name that comes up too often, but he should be. He really should be. Did influence a ton of people. I know that, if I'm not mistaken, I think Mario Bava is Tim Burton's favorite filmmaker. I know he's a huge fan of Black Sunday, and there's a couple of interviews with Tim Burton
I
out there
believe
where
he's
he name
quoted
drops.
saying this is his favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Richard Donner is the guy behind Superman, the original Superman films, in The Omen. He's a huge
Mhm.
fan of Mario Bava and of Black Sunday, and I believe that in The Omen, for the cemetery scene, he completely designed that based on the graveyard look within Black Sunday. So like Mario Bava has just influenced filmmakers from every generation, and you can still see that now. You can see it in Donna's work. You can definitely see it in Tim Burton's work. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure there is a Tim Burton without Mario Bava. So yeah, again, guys, just go and check him out. He's, if you can't tell with me completely gushing over him, he is definitely one of my favorite filmmakers out there.
Well,
Especially, one of my favorite.
when was the first time you saw it? Like, what impacted you so much about it? Why does it mean so much to you, man?
What Black Sunday in general?
Yeah. Like, what
I
made you decide to name your film
so it
festival and this channel?
it hit me at a time when I was looking for something to hit me. When I was in college, I was doing filmmaking, I was doing photography, but I liked college, but I wasn't in love with it. I kind of just wanted to get out there and kind of make my own stuff and kind of learn how to do that. But I weren't really sure kind of where I wanted to go with it. I didn't know what my style of filmmaking would be. Like the one thing I knew is that against everyone else that I went to college with, I was very much into classic cinema. Like my
Mhm.
favorite film of all time is Casablanca. So,
Okay.
and it has been for as long as I can remember. For me, it is the most perfect film ever made. It's the greatest screenplay ever wrote. It's It's just incredible. So for me, like classic film has always been, but I've always been a huge horror fan. But I didn't start getting into classic horror until I was in college, and there was a few films I saw that had a massive impression on me, mainly Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. But then I started going down like a European rabbit hole, just in general, like a European rabbit hole of cinema, new, old, whatever it was. And Black Sunday just done everything I love. It's horror, it's classic cinema, it's classic filmmaking, it's those gorgeous, beautiful sets, gorgeous cinematography, actors or stars that are larger than life that you really buy as stars. It does stuff that even when, I saw it however many years ago now, just like you watching it in 2020, it still stands up. There's still stuff that shocks you. There's still stuff that you go, how did they do that? And to me, that's incredible, right? Because we now live in a world where you can put into YouTube how you do anything and it will tell you, yeah, you watch like a low budget Italian film from the 1960s and you're going, how the hell did they do that? Like there's just so much in this film that spoke to me as a filmmaker, but probably more so than that spoke to me as a film fan. And that's why I think in terms of naming my film festival after it and then naming the podcast channel after it, it's because though I do put stuff into the festival and especially into this podcast from a filmmaking point of view, the film festival and the podcast were always meant to be me as a film fan. And there's no classic horror film really that sums up me being a film fan and especially a classic horror fan than Black Sunday. So it just really spoke to me. And again, it was just something that everyone knows the 80s horror films. Everyone knows the 90s horror films. Everyone knows the Universal Monsters films. But there's this time frame of classic horror from, probably like the late 40s to the back end of the 60s, early 70s that kind of gets lost a little bit. So again, for me, it was name the film festival Black Sunday, see where that goes, get some discussions going on that, name the podcast that, do a classic horror podcast. And I think that's why, again, like we joke about it every week and say, why do we keep doing these films from the 1960s? And even though every time I suggest a film to you, I'm not suggesting it from the point of view of, oh, I want to tackle everything from the 1960s, but I feel like it's the era people have seen, like everyone's heard of these films, but it's the era that for whatever reason, it's just not on TV as much, it's just not re-released in the cinema as much, so just not that many people have seen it these days, So yeah, like hugely long answer, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, there you go. But
yeah, dude. Man. So yeah, coming out the back of that, man, and that was good. That was a good deep dive. I actually like that. I like kind of going back and trying to understand why stuff influences me so much. So yeah, that was really cool, man. Thank you for that. I actually really enjoyed that myself.
I know we've said a few times, like, oh, we'll probably touch on this again. Like, I think whenever we decide to finally go back and touch things, we have to touch on this again first, because
I think this will be the first
like one. It's all been kind of raw. Like, man, there's a lot I didn't talk about that I took notes about, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Yeah, I think there's a hell of a lot
good
that you can unpack. Yeah, and I think that, like we've seen with our other episodes, what I'm really enjoying is when a lot of you guys out there that are listening reach out to us and tell us what you think, and not just to the podcast, but what you think of these films. So I think definitely when we do these episodes where we revisit films we've already talked about, we'll be bringing a lot of that back into it. We'll be bringing a lot of your opinions back into it and a lot of your views back into it. But yeah, I completely agree, dude. I think when we start, revisiting stuff, whenever that's going to be, Black Sunday's it's the first one. It's the first one on the chopping block, man, without a doubt. All right, dude. So to kind of close this one out, is there any trivia that you found really interesting that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, okay, two things, both relating to Barbara Steele. One of them is a makeup thing. To achieve a look of her being more pale, you think, oh, it's black and white. Just throw some, I don't know, more white on her. No, they used light blue because it made her appear the most pale. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I'm glad somebody figured that out.
And again, something that's only achievable with black and white film. So yeah, like really, really interesting. I love bits of trivia like that because it just shows you the techniques that can be used and why decisions were made to shoot this in black and white. And like you touch on, they did want this shot in color. But
no good day ever.
Yeah, but Bava put his foot down and said, nope, we're doing monochrome.
And between and touching on Bava and Steele both, and their contentious relationship, found it quite interesting that at one point Steele just didn't show up one day, and people were like, unprofessional. How could someone had convinced her that Bava had created a film stock that made clothed individuals appear to be naked? Like it's
Yeah.
So I don't know. Let that be the most lighthearted of the behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean,
little
they
quips.
like you touched on, man. They did have a very unusual relationship, and what's most fascinating about it is they somehow made it work because it launched both their careers. Like
Yeah.
without this film and without that collaboration, we don't have Mario Bava being the director he turned out to be. We don't have Barbara still turn up in all them films I mentioned. So yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How you can have that really odd relationship that doesn't appear to be working, yet you strike gold, everyone wins, right?
There it is.
Yeah, absolutely incredible,
And
man.
I guess the last bit of trivia I'll throw on isn't even really trivia. It's just more of an observation on my part. You talk about influence. I find it hard to believe that Peter Jackson wouldn't be a large fan of this film, because there's a scene where was it Prince Yavudich is driving a carriage containing, I
Yes,
believe, the doctor at the time,
yes,
and it's like a slow motion through a foggy wood, and there was one shot where the carriage is coming at camera, and I just I do you recall in the Fellowship of the Ring when the ring wraiths are coming after the hobbits?
oh yes, yes,
Like it just rang as inspired by it in my brain. But I've seen Fellowship enough times that like I made that connection immediately.
yeah. I think we're ended there. That was our first deep dive into Black Sunday, and
There
that's
it
our
is.
first deep dive because we're definitely going to revisit this. But yeah, we had to touch on it. Episode 10. I can't believe we've made it here. 10 weeks, 10 straight weeks. I
I
mean,
mean,
wow,
though,
right?
it's the
Unbelievable.
most
10
consistent
straight
thing
weeks.
I've done other than hold down a job in a long time.
Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, dude, thank you so much for joining me on this. I know, like, I pitched this to you a long time ago, and yeah, it's been incredibly enjoyable for me getting you to watch these films and talk about these. And yeah, for everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in every week. You guys are amazing. I can't wait to see where this goes in the next 10 episodes. We've got a little something special coming up for October. Going to be a good one. You're going to look forward to that. I guarantee it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, guys. Until next week. Stay safe, our hounds.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.